Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. All right. Just making sure. Can y'all hear me? All right, great. Cool. All right, everyone. So, this will be my last live until January. A lot of you are new to me and aren't too familiar with how my schedule works, but I only minister for 7 months at a time, and then I take a month off. And that just so happens to land in December, which is funny because a lot of people assume I do it for the holidays, and I don't celebrate most of the holidays. So it's just timing that it just so happens to be in December this time. And that'll start for me tomorrow. um, in the meantime, my family will be transitioning out of the States. We're getting our paperwork finished and everything so that we can move out of the States and be in Kenya. We're going to be in Cameroon come uh, late December, early January. We have there's actually a GoFundMe for those of you who are interested in sewing and donating into that. Of course, not mandatory by any means, but some of you might want to. You can find that on my website in the courses and events section of my website. There's a specific link that leads to that GoFundMe. And I'll put it in the description of this video after it's up. But let's see. Yeah, in general, anything that y'all are looking to connect with me on, whether that's my books, my classes, courses, trainings, and everything else, you can find it on my website, which is caveofmystery.org. You can find my books. All of my books are currently on Amazon. I'm finishing up another book that will be available to purchase, should be within the next week. So anything connected with me, you can find me on my website, caveofmystery.org. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anything before we get started today. All right, so today we're talking about ascension, but more so the ascended life, a lifestyle of the heavens, from the heavens. That's what I want to focus on a little bit. So, just giving you a foundation of where I'm addressing this from. I started having encounters in the spirit back in 2017. I started accessing the heavens in 2017. I started going into heaven on purpose, intentionally, somewhat daily in 2018. That's kind of been my lifestyle since that point, is engaging the heavens daily. And I say heavens because people forget that heaven is a plural thing. It's not just one place. Heaven doesn't exist. Heavens exist. There's not just one place that people go to or you have access to. You have access to multiple realms and places. In the Hebrew, it's the word Hashemayim, which means heavens. It's plural. The places above. So when it talks about us being seated in heavenly places, it's talking about multiple places where you have not only access, but authority in. It speaks to a place of dominion if you let it speak to that in you. So when talking about an ascended life, I first talked about Esther not too long ago, and you can find that recording on YouTube. It's in one of the other lives. I talked about Esther and the Heavenly Empire, and I'll give somewhat of a brief summary of that, but it definitely does you more justice to go back and listen to that. I've also done other lectures on the heavens, the seven heavens, the courtrooms. All of that stuff's on YouTube. So one of the reasons I like Esther is that Esther actually gives you a picture of yourself going through the sonship journey. That Esther starts off as a Hebrew, an Israelite. She has to put aside her Hebrew culture, her ethnicity, her training, her traditions, and then get assimilated into this empire, this kingdom, this government. And when she comes in, not only does she put down what she was taught, what she was raised in, but she gets trained by 7 teachers, 7 maidens that help walk her through the process of becoming royalty, preparing her for the throne. And really, Esther's process mirrors our own in that we all come from somewhere, whether it's our ethnicity, our race, our culture, our traditions. You come from somewhere, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. But when it comes time to operate in the heavenly empire, when it comes time to operate in the kingdom, that stuff doesn't matter anymore. Now, in the kingdom, in the empire, you'll find that there are going to be some things that you find familiar, but overall, it's an entirely different culture. The kingdom is its own culture, and our sonship journey is just that. Letting go of the things that we were given and taking on all of the things that are eternal for us, all the things that are kind of assigned to us as spirit, and learning to live from that, putting carnality down and learning to walk as spirit, stepping out of the outer court and learning how to live in the Holy of Holies. This is kingdom lifestyle. So there's culture shifts, there's fear of the unknown. This is normal, right? This is normal. It's okay that many of you starting off in your spiritual journey find yourselves frightened, find yourself disturbed, find yourselves unsure, sometimes feeling alone, feeling like you're in a vacuum, that the world is too big for you to find your place in it. That's normal because the kingdom is massive. And for most people, the number one fear is the fear of the unknown. Something that's too big to understand, too massive to comprehend is scary. So in that, we try to cling to what was familiar to us and try to make the kingdom fit within the boxes we've made for safety. So though you might have started your journey in religion, none of the religions are actually bringing you into your calling, into sonship. They're bringing you deeper into that religion. Whether that's Christianity, Islam, or the rest, the priority of religion is religion itself. When it comes to the kingdom, your identity takes up almost number one importance. So it changes things. In church, there's nothing more important than you serving. You thought I was going to say you worshiping. No, but you serving comes before you worshiping. They would rather you be busy and get work done than even do the worshiping, than even doing the praising, than even prayer or even an encounter with God isn't actually important in Christian religion. That stuff's not important. When you come into the kingdom, it's a culture shock because relationship and intimacy, compassion, and unity is a requirement. It's not a requirement in church. So it becomes, in church, they care about if you stacking chairs and if you got good attendance. The kingdom doesn't care about that stuff. It's a government, not a religion. So part of it is learning that a lot of the things that we've put importance in, a lot of things that we've been dogmatic about, a lot of things that we might have been belligerent about actually hold no importance in heaven. They held importance within the religion that we were in. So it comes time to redefine some things or reevaluate the importance of a lot of things. Is this important because heaven cares about it? The heavens care about it. The kingdom cares about it. Or is this important to the religion that I was in? Is this something that church cared about? Or is this something that Elohim cared about? And it's in that we find out that we've been largely distracted off on the wrong mission. So not only have I found inspiration in the story of Esther, Esther's story is your story. And you move through that story at your own pace. You'll find yourself in any stage of her journey, you'll find yourself at, just depending on where you are in it. Maybe you're at the very beginning, still clinging on to your culture, your religion, not yet gone into the empire, not yet moved into government, but you're loyal to your king, you're loyal to your culture, you're loyal to your religion. Maybe you're at the beginning stages where you're being walked in and you've decided to go into the kingdom, but you haven't yet started learning. Or maybe you're in the learning process and you're getting trained by the 7 spirits who actually fit the place of the 7 maidens. And you're being prepared for royalty. Or maybe, and there's few of you like this, that you've already undergone your training and you're on the other side of it and you are just royalty. You're already walking in your fullness. You've completed your classes. You are who you're meant to be, and you're walking in the fullness of that. For the 2 of you that might ever see this video, congratulations. So, I don't actually want to talk about Esther for long, just laying a foundation with Esther. I like Esther. What I instead want to talk about is Jacob. Because the story of Jacob and his transition into Israel actually gives us codes of how culture shifts when we step out of culture and religion and move into kingdom, when we move into spirit. Remember, Jacob is born, son of Isaac. He has a brother named Esau, his older brother. Older brother has favor. Jacob actually tricks his brother, takes his birthright. Isaac, blind and old, goes to bless his sons. And when he goes to bless him, he crosses his hands and anoints them. And if you notice that was actually a moment of error. That actually threw things out of alignment. The blessing that was meant for Jacob went to Esau, and the blessing that was meant for Esau went to Jacob. Their blessings got swapped. Which is why after this moment, you have Jacob, who's not a hunter, out wandering the wilderness, because the grace that was on his life was meant for a hunter. So he got commissioned into a thing that wasn't him. And that grace moved him where it would have been great for a hunter to be. That speaks to the danger of coveting other people's blessings. There's a toxic culture, especially within more charismatic and Pentecostal traditions, where when someone's receiving a prophecy, if you like it, they say, oh, what's for one of us is for all of us. You can just receive it too. Yeah, that's dangerous, because even though it's beneficial, it can very well bless you out of alignment. So you have someone, Esau and Jacob end up in opposite positions. They end up in a space that's not conducive for what they actually carry, all because one wanted to play around. So they're blessed and out of alignment. I think that's where a lot of people find themselves. So then we look at the story of Jacob. One day, he meets a stranger while he's in the wilderness. He meets his God. He meets Yahweh. He meets his God, and he fights his God. And he says, I won't let you go until you bless me. So after fighting with the God of his people, the God of the Hebrews, after fighting with that God all night, he survives the encounter. God throws his hip out of socket. He says, I can't let you go around unscathed after an encounter with me all day. And then he blesses him. It's after that point he changes his name, because a name reveals a nature. A name reveals a nature. A name is a frequency. It's a code. Jacob meant the supplanter. Being the supplanter isn't much different than being Jezebel. He's one who's taking all of his advancements by force. He's a trickster. He's tricking his way to the top. He's surviving off of cunning. Well, after this, he goes from that to Israel. Israel means the prince of El, the father, right? The father's name is El, not Yahweh. So he goes from the prince of El. He goes from the trickster to the prince of El. He goes from being out of alignment to blessed by something greater than even Yahweh, putting himself actually on equal footing with Yahweh. Israel is a space of an ascended son. That's the place of princes. That's the place of the sons of God. Israel is a dimension. So yes, he actually had to beat up Yahweh in the Old Testament in order to gain favor and move into the kingdom. Which is why after this, I want you to notice something. It's not until after he beats his God in a fight. They wrestle all day. He wins. And then he becomes Israel. He steps into this ascended identity that he starts to work with the Mazzaroth. The Mazzaroth, or as many of you are more familiar with, the Zodiac. He works with the Zodiac from an ascended place. Jacob didn't know anything about the heavens, the stars, the charts, or none of that. But Israel did. That goes to show you a culture shift in and of itself. Astrology and astronomy was not required while he was just a Hebrew. But once he stepped into the position of a son of El, now astrology is second nature. Not only did he start to practice it, but he worked with it to such a degree that he had 12 sons and blessed all 12 of his kids in accordance with the house that they were born under. See, in church, I was taught that Zodiac was demonic, that's witchcraft. We don't do that, right? But yet I'm reading the Bible and I'm watching someone in their ascended state, in their blessed state, in their heavenly state, in their identity, use the Mazzaroth, use the Zodiac 12 times. They say, oh, you don't need no horoscope. Well, that's kind of what all the prophecies over the patriarchs were. The original 12 sons all received a blessing based on a prophecy, based on the Zodiac house that was above them when they were born. Y'all didn't read that, did you? No, they skip right over that part in Sunday school. So when we're looking, and this is just Genesis, right? Jacob himself, the story of Jacob to Israel, in many ways can be seen as an allegory, again, of your process of stepping into sonship. Is that there came a moment where he had to step out of his culture. He had to contend with the God that he had been brought up under and find his footing as equal to that God. Remember, Yahweh is not the father. El is. He didn't change his name to Israel, the prince of Yahweh. That's not his name. His name is Israel, the prince of El. Yahweh is an Israel himself. He's a prince of El. Yeshua is an Israel. He's a prince, a son of El. This is why his name is Emmanuel. It's El is with us. Not Emmanuel. Yahweh is with, no. Yahweh is in Israel. So what happened is, whether you want to look at it as an event or you want to look at it as an allegory, that's your business. But he transitioned from being under a religion, bound to a culture. Funny enough, you know the word religion means to be bound again. Yeah, so he finds himself in a religion, he's bound. And in order to get unbound from that religion, he contends with the God of that religion all night. and he wrestles his way out of it. And guess what? He comes out with a limp. It wasn't easy. Who says deconstruction has to be easy? Who says it has to be fun? Right? So he comes out of that. He has to contend with his God all night. It leaves him with a limp, but he gets his blessing. And the blessing that he received was his true identity, the fact that he was always equal to the God that he was submitted under. His culture sold him under his birthright. Birthrights play a huge role in the story of Jacob and Esau, or Jacob and Israel. We even see the realignment happen as we continue, right? So Israel, he has 12 sons. His 12 sons are blessed in accordance with the zodiac house that they were born under. Heaven had a say in each one of his sons' lives. There is no Judah without the blessing of Leo. Right? Every one of the sons were blessed in accordance with the house of zodiac. You got to receive that. That's heavenly technology. That's ascended codes. These are these ascension codes I'm talking to you about. The zodiac is one of them. That's laws of the first and second heaven. They're much more dominant there. And the way that the heavens work, there's 7 main heavens with an infinity of dimensions and realms between them, but they're separated into 7 main sections. And a simple rule is that the higher the heaven, the more it rules over. The 7th rules over the rest. The first, you only rule over what's below you. Orders are given to the top down, not from the bottom up. So even though the Mazzaroth or the zodiac is in the first and second heaven, it still has dominion over the heavens and the spaces and the realms below it. We're going to come back to talking about that, but I'm telling you why it matters. This is why in the book of Job, he talks about bringing forth the Mazzaroth in its seasons. He's again working with this zodiac thing because that's important once you get off of Earth. Once you get off of Earth, it's important. Right. If you're on Earth, this stuff doesn't matter. That's your God. That's your bosses. They control you. They're responsible. They have charge over you if you're just going to live on Earth. But if we're talking about living an ascended life, there comes different rules and regulations. So again, talking about Israel, right? He has 12 sons. He blesses them all in accordance with the house that they're born under. And then they all grow up. You know, he gets married to Rachel and Leah. Most of his kids come from Leah, the one he didn't want. He has 2 kids with Rachel, the wife that he actually wanted. And that's the one he gives his firstborn blessing to. It goes to Joseph, which is why there is no tribe of Joseph. There's the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. Duality, a double portion, is the blessing for firstborns. So since he's the firstborn of covenant, he receives that double blessing. Joseph has 2 tribes. Now, Ephraim and Manasseh being the sons of Joseph, who's the son of Israel. Do y'all know who his sons are? In order for you to get the fulfillment of Joseph, you know, we love the story of Joseph. His brothers are jealous of him. They sell him into slavery. He gets out. He later rules a nation, blesses them in the aftermath, interprets a bunch of dreams, has a great gift for organization and administration. In fact, if you begin to read some of the other books, like the Testaments of the patriarchs, it talks about how his actual gift was ascension itself. It was his ability to walk between worlds and transition over, moving from place to place and having favor in every place was really his blessing. And we see that blessing all throughout his life. living in two places at the same time, walking in two worlds at the same time. I think you get the point. But he did this even culturally because as a Hebrew, as an Israelite, he's actually an Israelite now, son of Israel. He gets married to an Egyptian, and his kids are Egyptian and Hebrew. And when he goes to bless them, guess what he does? He crosses his hands and lays hands on them. The same thing that Isaac did to his father and his uncle. This puts things back into order. This fixes their bloodline. In fact, if you want to look at it this way, that whole story is about DNA. They say Jacob's ladder is the DNA strand, which is why that story deals with lineage so much. 12 rungs on a ladder, 2 strands of DNA, dealing with the fact that he's constantly ascending and descending. He's living as a place for heavenly interaction on the earth. But notice this. It was after, right? The assimilation of Egypt into their culture was a byproduct of their ascended life. That wasn't a sign of them being off course. Jacob had no affiliation with Egypt. Israel did. Jacob had no affiliation with the zodiac. Israel did. There are no, Jacob didn't have any kids. Israel did, which goes to show you that all of these different levels, right? Let me say it like this. An archetype of sonship found even within the zodiac is that there's secretly a 13th house called Ophiuchus, which is the guy holding the snake, the healer, the wisdom teacher. See, the simple truth of zodiac is that, well, it's a wheel. And in the center of the wheel stands the master of the wheel. That would be Ophiuchus, the Christ figure, who rules over the other 12. So it's better to say, just to give you a different presentation, that the journey of Christhood, the journey of sonship, even in this, is to master the house you start in, move into the center, become Christ in that field, and then lord over the other 11. You become the one in the center rather than the one in the wheel. So this is what we're dealing with. An idea of Christhood. Well, there's this one guy with 12 people around him. That should sound familiar. That's Yeshua and his 12 disciples. Again, giving you a picture of this Israel stuff. The Christ in the middle, surrounded by the 12 houses they lord over. There's 12 dimensions of Christhood that you don't really master outside of being the Christ in the center, outside of being Israel. See, the thing about his 12 sons is that all of them bore dimensions of him. He had to divide himself into 12 in order for you to get it. 12 dimensions. And one of those dimensions received a double portion. So you could actually say 13 even in that. You see this again. Yeshua's story. Judas leaves. They get another one to replace him. I think it was Matthias. Again, you go from 12 to 13, kind of sort of, depending on how you look at it. So this goes to show you that culture changes depending on where you live from, the identity that you have. Now, I'm going to tell you something, and this is going to rub a lot of you wrong. That's okay. I'd rather tell you. And I'm also going to tell you why it's important when I tell you. And then I'm going to tell you what to do about it after I tell you. I'm not going to leave you hanging. I don't want to just shock you. I'm actually trying to help here. First thing I want to tell you is that Yahweh is not your father. I know, that's rough. It's the God of the Old Testament. A lot of us grew up under that culture. We thought that was God. He's not. That's your brother. That's not your father. That's step one. Now, I've done another lecture called The Empire of El. I've done a few videos on Yahweh. You can check that out. Now, there's important things I want to share with this, right? Regardless of the culture you come out of, there comes a moment where you step out of the religion and stand side by side with the God that you used to be under. That's important for sonship. Being under a God is fine for being Jacob. But when it comes time to be Israel, you have to sit next to them. You're working alongside instead of working for. Are y'all following me? So let me tell you about my life. I'll use my life, for example. When I was a Christian, I was the best Christian ever Christian. Oh, I did all the stuff you're supposed to do on paper. I read the Bible multiple times. I was at church every time the doors open. I volunteered without looking for any thank yous or anything like that. I just wanted to serve. I just wanted to work. I just wanted to be in the house of God around God's people. That's all I wanted. I volunteered. I did everything. I was fasting. No one fasts. I grew up Baptist. We eat after service. We don't fast. I'm saying that to say that when I was in Christianity, I was in it. There came a moment as I started to prioritize my sonship that a lot of my desires and a lot of my culture began to shift. Now, when I say my behavior, my culture started to shift, people are like, oh man, he started drinking. He started smoking. He started doing it. No. I actually live a cleaner life than y'all without the religion in the way. But there came a moment where what I was doing originally to engage God, to work with Elohim, stopped working. And they started to put requirements on me that I wasn't comfortable with because they were demanding me to walk in an identity that I was taught was a bad thing. So I used to worship for hours a day, pray for hours a day. There came a moment, one day Yeshua said, stop praying. I don't want you to do that. One day I went to cut on some music. I was finna worship. Just let him know how much I loved him. He said, cut that music off. Don't do that. I said, but why? He didn't answer me. Some time passes. I find out, I used to go to all types of church events. There was some events coming up. I was like, ooh, I can't wait to go to that one. He said, don't go. I said, what is going on? I can't pray. I can't worship. I can't go to church. Like, what's going on here? I'm like, isn't this what we're supposed to be doing? He pretty much laughed in my face when I said that. I'm like, what's funny? He says, when did I tell you I wanted you to do that? And I'm looking through my memory. I'm like, I can't remember a moment where he said, you need to be in church. You need to worship me for hours a day. You need to be doing this and that. I'm like, you've never told me any of that, to be honest. I'm like, should I stop all of it altogether? He's like, no, but I wanted you to get that I never told you to do that myself. Your religion gave you that. Christianity gave you that. You got that from Christians. You didn't get that from me. And I'm like, you're right. I didn't get that from you. There came a moment, early 2020. I'm telling you this. I'm telling you a bunch of fragmented stories on purpose because all of it doesn't matter. Early 2020, I have a restart. Just because I recognize this was around January. This was early 2020. I realized that there are things that I was telling people that I couldn't say God told me that. And I'm someone who's always valued my credibility. And I want to be able to always say, God agrees with me. And I'm like, there's a lot of things that I believe, that I've heard from teachers that I respect, that I like, but I can't say God told me that. So I made a decision in that moment. I'm like, all right, I'm getting rid of everything psychologically. I'm getting rid of everything that I know didn't come from God. I actually made it easier. Only the things that I could remember that they had ever told me or confirmed to me is what I kept. So I've been relearning everything since then. It's in that process that I started to deconstruct. So my deconstruction journey was not difficult. It was slow, but it wasn't difficult because I had already reclined to a certain degree. I had already given myself a certain measure of grace, and that's the same grace I give everyone else. I recognized that I was wrong. Therefore, the way I see it, everybody's already wrong. So we have nothing to be afraid of. We just get to learn together. No condemnation in that. We were already wrong. Now we just get to go find out what's true. So I remember I used to irritate people around this time because they'd ask me questions about stuff that was in the Bible. And they'd ask me what happened. And I'd say, I don't know. They say, well, they say it in the Bible. I'm like, I don't know. Could be translation error. Could be added. I don't know. Holy Spirit ain't never told me that's what happened. So I don't know what happened. The Bible says this. I've read the Bible a bunch, but I don't know if that happened that way or not. Could be an allegory that we're taking literal. I don't know. That bothered people. But I would rather bother people in that way than have to be one of those preachers that comes back 10, 15, 20 years later saying, hey, you know that stuff I've been teaching for a decade? That's actually completely wrong. I apologize. I'm like, no, I'd rather build slow and know everything I'm teaching is legit than have to go back and fix it later. I'm telling y'all this for a reason. In this process, I'm getting to know, because I'm spending so much time talking with Yeshua, I'm talking with Holy Spirit, I'm talking with the Father, I'm learning them from them, and I'm learning their culture apart from the culture that I was in. Because beforehand, and a lot of people are not honest about this, a lot of us simply do our best to get God to bless us in whatever it is we've decided to do without ever knowing what they would rather us be doing or knowing what we should be doing. We just fight for blessings. We kind of equate spirituality to carnal success, meaning that as long as you're prosperous, that means that the hand of God is on you. You have favor because you have a nice house, nice car, family taken care of, educate. Those are good things, but those don't necessarily mean that someone is in the space that they were meant to hold in the spirit. Even in ministries, we look at who's more popular as who's more credible rather than who has the greater connection to the spirit, who's actually walking in the authority, who's actually walking in power, who actually has a great character, who really has wisdom. We don't value that stuff. We value who has the most followers. How many people are they preaching to on a regular? How many churches they have under them? How many people they've trained, quote unquote trained? I've seen ministries where they do trainings and hundreds of people take the trainings. And after the trainings is over, 0 people out of the hundreds can do what the teacher can do. I don't like this stuff. That speaks to a flaw in the education flow. That means that there's something being missed even in the training. I promise I'm still talking about ascension. That oftentimes we find ourselves distracted without knowing we're distracted just because we're genuine. You can be genuinely distracted, meaning that you're focusing on something that you think is important that the royal family never said was important. And you're trying to get them to bless and co-sign something they never commissioned you into. I know so many people that when they gave their life to Christ, first thing when they tried to start getting their life together, first thing they did was they say, you know what, I'm gonna go join me a church. I'm gonna start tithing, I'm gonna start giving, I'm gonna go join somebody's choir. Because this is a cultural archetype in their head of what getting your life right looks like. Not that they were sitting at home and God said, I need you to go to that church down the street. And I'm not speaking about whether or not they were helped or hurt or eventually got on the track or not. Just the simple fact that the first thing that came to mind that led them was the cultural pressure, not an encounter from the Spirit. We can be honest and say a lot of us started our journeys off of cultural peer pressure rather than divine encounter. That sets you up for failure because you value the culture's input more than the encounters when you start to have encounters. Because the culture became your God first. You know how many people I know stuck in churches that they don't want to be in just because they're like, oh, I love so many people here. I love the people. The preacher has never done anything wrong to me. I love them. They've always helped me. But at the second thing they'll say is, but I'm not really receiving much. The teachings, I come here every week. I'm one of the first people here, but none of this has anything to do with where I am. I'm not growing here, but I love them. Because the culture is your God, not your spirit. I'm not growing here. It's not helping me, but I love the people. They've never done me anything. I love them so much. Because the culture is still God. The church is still God, not God. God's not God. The culture is God. See, if God was your God, you would be doing what God told you to do instead of what the culture tells you is important. So in that, you find out where people's loyalties actually lie. Some people are afraid of the unknown, and that even fits with those of you who have felt the pull forever to be unchurched and just don't know where to go after you leave. And you're like, I've asked God where I should go next, but I've never got an answer. I'll give you a secret about hearing from the royal family, whether it's the Father, Yeshua, Holy Spirit, or the seven spirits. I'll give you a key for why they don't talk to y'all sometimes. If you haven't done the last thing they told you to do, they don't have a new thing for you. So if they say, I want you to leave this church, and you waiting on them to tell you where to go after you leave, you're not going to get it. They're waiting for you to follow instruction 1. You'll get 2 after you follow 1. Y'all don't listen, right? Because what would happen is, oh, I want you to go here instead. I want you to start doing this. What y'all would do is y'all would just do both. Y'all fit them both into your schedule. So you don't get to leave here and you still get to go do that. But no, leaving was step 1. Detaching, number 1. Y'all sneaky like that. So many of you won't hear another thing because you're still trying to wait for clarity and wisdom on the thing you already were instructed to do. Oftentimes you get the instructions on how to do it while you're doing it. There's times when I'm prophesying over somebody and the only thing I heard in the spirit was go talk to them. The words find me after I start talking to them. It's not like I get this whole list on the side of me. I'm like, okay, when I go over there, I'm supposed to tell them this, and this. No, sometimes it's just go talk to them. I'm like, talk about what? And I hear nothing. I'm like, gotcha. Just go talk. The fear of failure keeps a lot of you from moving in sonship because you're afraid of going out on a limb and ruining your reputation. Oh no, now people are going to think I'm crazy. People are going to look at me funny. Why is that a fear? Oh, we've watched what's happened to other people who stepped outside of the box. You watched it that there was no grace for them when they made a mistake. So it's more about you not trusting the culture that you're in. Because you know, if it doesn't go right, they're going to use you as an example to never step out of the box. Forgetting that that's what forerunners are. Let's talk about forerunners. The point of a forerunner, a trailblazer, is to go and create a path where one doesn't exist. To go and pave a way where there isn't a way, which means most forerunners are going to mess up. They're going to make a lot of mistakes because there isn't a manual for it. They're going into uncharted territory, which means they don't know where they're going. It's not charted yet. It's easy to watch after they've fallen. It's like when people go to excavate caves. They're moving through mountains, moving through cave networks, and they go through one spot, and then the cave collapses on them. Well, it's easy in hindsight to say, ooh, they probably shouldn't have went down that cave, but to be the one at doing the excavating, you don't know that yet. You don't know the right way from the wrong way because there are no ways. People talk about Jason Westerfield. They're like, oh no, he went off the deep end. He didn't go off the deep end. He went into uncharted territory. And the fear of the unknown caused y'all to throw him away instead of help him pioneer. We've called the wrong people pioneers. You mean people who did what we've already been doing and just got more popular at it? What did they pioneer? They're doing the same thing. How is such and such a pioneer? And they're doing the same thing that such and such that came before them did, which is the same thing that the people before them. It's not a pioneer. They didn't start anything. They just got popular in that which was already established. When it comes time to talk about these pioneers, you're looking at people who are going to get labeled heretics because they're not following the rules. They're making new ones for a new generation. So I'll give you some level of encouragement. I'll give you some level of comfort for those of you who are trailblazers, who are pioneers. That's actually your calling. Understand that the people that you love and respect and honor don't give a dang about you. They don't care about you. They value their culture, and you're stepping outside of it. You will experience love and comfort depending on how close you are to the box that they're in. Once you step outside of that, consider the door slammed shut and locked. Once you get over that and just allow that to be true, yes, you love them. That doesn't mean that they're going to support you. That doesn't mean that they have your back. That doesn't mean that they are going to help you move forward. You're going to receive prophecies from people who are going to hurt your feelings, who are going to speak against you once you start doing the very thing that they prophesied over you. That's forerunner stuff. That's supposed to happen. It's unfortunate. The people who used to encourage you, oh yeah, keep going, don't let nobody stop you, are the very ones standing in your way when you actually start. Don't take it to heart. I promise we're still talking about ascension, because in ascension, or in the ascended state, that ascended identity, you actually find yourself in a place where you're living from such a different space that you have a different culture and different rules and regulations that you're operating by. Understand that the level that you're in comes with different protocols. It comes with different rules and regulations. Certain things were fine when you were just dumb and in religion. You were experiencing blessings and favor. It wasn't until you tried to be responsible you started experiencing attacks and chaos and things falling apart. That's not the devil after you. That's a result of responsibility. That's supposed to happen. It's easy to have friends. It's easy to have connection. It's easy to network when the network is made of people all terrified of outside of the box, which means y'all just get together and create new ways to do the same thing over and over again. I'm telling you, for those of you who ain't been in church in over a decade, I want you to know the messages have not changed. Oh, y'all need to submit to authority. They've been preaching that since the 50s. Oh, women, y'all got to love y'all husband. Y'all got to be submissive to your husband. They've been preaching that since slavery days, since the 1800s, 1700s. Y'all need to get serious. Oh, we need to pray. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear. Let's do this together. Yeah, they say that every year. You haven't missed anything. Just redoing the same stuff. Because guess what? The actual calling that you have isn't in Jacob, it's in Israel. It's not in it. The calling that you have doesn't belong to Esther. It doesn't belong to Hadassah. It belongs to Esther. It's not the version of you that's still bound to your culture, that's still bound to your religion. That one doesn't have any that doesn't have anything. Once you start trying to get heaven involved, there's new rules and regulations. The reason that you experience blessings in religion is that you were experiencing the blessing of that religion while you were in that religion. They exist. You can be blessed in religion. But when it comes time to actually move in sonship, when it comes time to be spiritual, guess what? The Spirit will pull you out of whatever box you're in, because your calling and your true identity is so much bigger than the box. Jacob just wanted his brother's birthright, not even knowing what it was. He transfigured into Israel and became the father of 12 nations, 12 tribes. He became so much bigger than what Israel was 12 times bigger than Jacob. It was a magnitude shift by 12. So it came with a certain deal of effort, but it also came with a bigger reward. He got Christhood. The rules changed. Esther had to put down whatever she learned as Hadassah in order to walk in the kingdom. Understand this. When you choose to step outside of the box, the people in the box, 99.9999999% of them will no longer support you. Do not take that personal. You left the box. You left their God. Their God wasn't the God that you're talking about. Oh, you thought that their God was God. You thought you thought Elohim was the one that orchestrated their steps, and no. Don't be naive. That's not what they care about. Familiarity is the God. The culture is the God. So when you leave their God, even if you're still with their God, they lose support for you. They lose connection with you. They lose empathy for you because you're not with their God anymore, their actual God. See, this was frustrating for me because I couldn't understand it at one point. I'm like, I'm doing everything on paper that I should be doing. I'm praying, I'm fasting, I'm healing the sick, I'm raising the dead, I'm casting out devils, I'm walking in and out of the heavens on a daily basis. I've taken people with me into the heavens multiple times, and no one cares. I'm like, why don't anyone care? Oh, that's right. I'm not a Christian. Even if they don't know I'm not a Christian, their subconscious knows I'm not a Christian. So even if I still have a face-to-face relationship with Christ, they don't care about that. Not because they don't care. Well, partially because they don't care about Christ as much as they care about Christ. They care about the culture and the box more than they care about the God or the mascot of the box. It took me forever to crack that code. Familiarity is the guide. So don't take that stuff personal. Recognize it for what it is. You left their actual guide. The fear of the unknown. They don't know where you're going. They don't know what you're doing. You're scary to them. They're afraid of you and where you're going. That's a given. This is a byproduct of an ascended life, because guess what? Just as Esther had to learn new ways to live, just as Hadassah had to learn new ways to live as Esther, Jacob had to learn new ways to live as Israel. There's a version of you with an ascended life that has a different lifestyle altogether. So the struggle that many of you have is that you'll find yourself wanting to go deeper into the spiritual things. You actually have a legit hunger for the things of the spirit, and you want to go beyond. You want to know the truth, but you're not going forward. Usually due to loyalty to someone or something, or even just the box itself. So internally you'll separate, but physically stay around. So now you're dissatisfied because you're in an environment that cannot feed you, cannot support you, because they don't have the same goal as you. Because the goal isn't just to worship the right God. The goal for you is to know the truth, is to walk in your calling. Guess what? Most church people have no desire to do their calling. They don't care to know what it is. They're just trying to be good enough to not go to the hell they think exists, or good enough to go to the heaven that they think they have to die to get to. They're not trying to do no heavenly calling. They're trying to do good enough. You know, and so when I started to study different people, right, I'm honest about my inspirations. I was fascinated with Francis of Assisi, a man who walked in such an immersion in the spirit that animals came to hear him preach. The way I see it, if you preaching and animals don't come to see you, you ain't said nothing yet. Right. You know, I'm looking at people like Martin de Porres and Catherine of Siena and Teresa. I'm looking at these general, I'm fascinated by Catherine Kuhlman, watching her videos on repeat and hearing stories from people who knew her personally, and just hearing the lifestyle of immersion that they lived in. I'm listening and I'm learning about a man named Joseph Ayo Babalola in Nigeria, who no one talks about because he was of the wrong ethnicity for popularity. You know, he was around the same time as Catherine. We know Catherine. We don't know Joseph Babalola. It's a man actually called fire from heaven and burn a tree down. Used to pray for days and weeks straight and used to walk on the air. Yeah, they don't talk about him. We know Catherine. Catherine's great. I love Catherine. Still inspirational. But the streamlined thing that I noticed is that all of these people actually prioritized what they actually believed in. They prioritized what they actually knew to be the truth. And in many ways actually did get to become pioneers and forerunners in certain phases and spaces. You know, we have like modern day Pentecostals will hate black people and forget that their founder is black. There is no modern day Pentecostalism without William Seymour. They hate women. Pentecostalism in America started with a woman, Mariah Woodworth Etter. They don't let you wear a mustache. Charles Fox Parham had a mustache. Yeah, you know, it's different to be a forerunner than it is to be a follower. And I'll just leave that at that. But I've even noticed a lot of them, a lot of the people I still honor and they still inspire me, still stayed within the box of their religion. Never going fully into the kingdom itself. And some people ask me that question. That's a common question I get all the time. How were they with Holy Spirit that much and didn't know? How were they with Yeshua that much and didn't know? How were they with Yahweh this much? And well, I know how they could be with Yahweh because he'd be lying. But how did they have this many encounters and not know? It's because they honor your boundaries. They honor your box. If you put yourself in a box, they'll work with you in your box. It takes a different approach to say, I want what is true, and I'm willing to divorce my boxes. You know, in church, you hear stuff like, I want all of you. But then we start talking about all of him and they start getting scared, which means they don't actually want all of him. They want as much of him that still fits within that box. The moment Yeshua becomes too big for church, he becomes a false Christ to them. Now that's a familiar spirit now. No, it's your same Christ that you know is bigger than your boxes. You say, the Bible, the book of John ends with it being that he did so much stuff and his magnitude was so great that the libraries of the world couldn't contain all the things that he did. He's too big to fit in a book altogether. But when he starts to do things a little bit different and he shows up in a way that freaks you out, you're even willing to divorce him. We want Yeshua as long as we get to call him Jesus and he can be white. And as long as he'll keep me in church and bless me and my family, that's all I want. Which means you don't actually want truth. You want to be seen as a good person, but you don't want truth. You want to be seen as a good person, you don't want to be righteous. Righteousness is about doing what is right. How can you do what is right authentically while being trapped in an illusion by your own choice? And I can't beat up on them too much, right? Even whether we're talking about modern day people who simply don't know, or people from the past that didn't know. Because there's certain things I didn't know until I was ready to. For years, the number one question that I have few questions that I don't ask the royal family. And it's because I know they'll answer me if I ask. And for years, one of the questions I refuse to ask them is Yahweh and El the same person? I refuse to ask them that because I knew that if I asked that question, I was going to get an answer and I would have to redo everything. So I said, don't tell me that. Well, one day, Holy Spirit hinted at the right answer, and that was enough for me. I was like, oh, man, you answered it. Well, it wasn't until after I fully deconstructed Yahweh versus El and Yahweh being two different people and who they actually are and where they fit, that my ministry blew up and people who were looking for truth came and found me. That a lot of the breakthrough that I was praying for was on the other side of the question I was telling them not to answer. So I know how people can be trapped by their own boxes. Fear of the unknown. I was just as afraid of the unknown just a few years ago. It's for this reason that we'll know about when studying the Bible, we'll study the Hebraic. But if we start to talk about Egypt, people get scared. Right. Because that's an unknown area. We don't know what that is. Not that it's wrong. We don't know what it is. When I start to talk, see, for some people, it's the fear of being wrong. Free yourself and just know you're already wrong. Now you have the grace to go learn what is true. Because again, Egypt was a part of Israel's life. The Prince of God was part Egyptian. It wasn't a part of Jacob. Now, I'm not telling you that Egypt specifically is for you. What I'm saying is that it goes beyond all of the boundaries, even the cultural boundaries. An idea of omnipresence that started to bother me. I'm like, how can I believe that God is everywhere, yet the only part of the world that's ever had an encounter with God is this little bitty pocket of about 30 miles that we call the Middle East, but specifically this part within it. That's the only place that it had an encounter with God. Yeah, absolutely not. I'm like, no, all the cultures around the world have met God. We battle on the boxes that we've put that royal family into, not about the God itself or the family itself. People don't battle about Yeshua. They battle about how they want Yeshua to be perceived, even within Christian confines. This is why they have so many denominations. They agree on the same guy. They like the same guy. What they disagree with is the presentation of that one guy, the box that they have that guy in, whether it's cultural or it's traditional or it's just religious. Maybe it comes down to verbiage. The only difference between the Assemblies of God and Kojic is that Assemblies of God didn't want to be under a black preacher, a black leader. So they kept the same doctrine and just moved over something as simple as that. That's how easy it was to start another denomination. It came down to a box. We don't want the Negro, was all that was about. Wasn't that it was a different spirit, is that it came in a package and worked in a way that they were uncomfortable with. This is the truth across the board. All the religions, all the different civilizations have had encounters with the same royal family. And I say that because Elohim is a plural word. It's not one person. I made a session about this already. God doesn't exist. This singular guy y'all are looking for isn't real. Oh, but the Bible says that Israel, your God, is one. Yes, the God of the Israelites, one. Just one dude. Not only one exists. No. The Bible is a polytheistic book. A bunch of gods in the Bible. Oh, well, none is greater than Yahweh. Yahweh loses fights in the Old Testament. Y'all don't pay attention. You can't be the most powerful and lose fights. Nice. So we look at people, right? And when I say this, people think I'm talking about racism in America, about black people. That's what y'all think I'm talking about all the time. One of the biggest problems with the reason why we can't grow up is racism. You've decided that the only cultures that are safe to learn from are the ones that you think are presented in a positive light in the Bible. That's racism. Which means you only learn from the Greeks and Hebrews, and barely. Because you'll take the English over the Greek and the Hebrew as long as what's in the English fits the box that you were already in. So if you're a Bible scholar, the only thing you have to do to be credible, and people don't argue with you, is say, oh, I know Greek fluently. I know Hebrew fluently. I know Aramaic fluently. You just won every argument. But if I say I know Medu Netter, people are like, what is that? What is that? Oh, I know Sanskrit. Okay, and? I'm able to read cuneiform. Who cares? What does that have to do with anything? See, they forget that even in the Bible, a lot of the people in the Bible, one, were not Christian. There are 0 Christians in the Bible. None. Christians didn't show up until 300 years after the events of the Bible had ended. What about when it says that they thought they were Christians in Antioch? No, that was them getting confused with being of the cult of Serapis Christos. That was a different type of Christian. Christians didn't exist then. 0 Christians in the Bible. Well, what about when we talk about the saints, the cloud of witnesses? It says you are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, those in the heavens that have passed on. Did you notice that 0 of them were Christian? Some of them weren't even Hebrew. 2 of them were Egyptian. Think about it. The Hebrews by name don't start in the Bible until Abraham. The Israelites don't start until Jacob transitions into Israel and then has 12 kids. The Judeans don't start until Judah has descendants. Noah was not a Hebrew. He's Mesopotamian. Adam, not Hebrew, Mesopotamian. Moses, genetically Hebrew, raised Egyptian. That man was in his 80s before he started to embrace his Hebrew culture. Joseph, Hebrew by lineage, Egyptian for most of his life. Abel, Mesopotamian. You got to pay attention to stuff. See, when you read the Bible without all the stuff in the way, all the boxes in the way, you get a less racist story, and you get something you can actually benefit from. Not only, look, just talking about Egypt a little bit. I promise I wasn't planning on it. When they praise Moses in the book of Hebrews for being a saint and a holy man, the thing that they praise him for is the wisdom he got from Egypt that he gave to them. But I have mystics that look at me funny for embracing Egypt. Did you know it's impossible to embrace the Hebraic without embracing Kemetic, because most of the Hebraic culture is very much Egyptian and Canaanite. Because this is what you get. Like I said, the book of Esther does a great job. In the book of Esther, the empire that she gets assimilated into is one that stretches from Kush to India. That speaks to the multicultural nature of the empire of heaven, meaning that it's so big, it doesn't fit into one culture. It doesn't fit into one language. It doesn't fit into one presentation. It fits into many. You'll go in, you'll see some things that look familiar, but most of it is completely different. But that's if you want to live an ascended life. You actually want to live a life from the heavens, then that's a little different. You have to live your life as the heavens operate. Not even comes down. See, living an ascended life changes your relationships. Not just like your relationships with people. Yeah, that changes, but it changes your relationship with creation itself. Angels work with you different. Demons respond to you different. People respond to you different. Elements respond to you different. Time and space respond to you different. When you actually start to live in heavenly spaces. Christians and a lot of sons have an addiction to affirmation. In that they'll quote themselves into a place that they've never experienced. They will affirm themselves into a place that they've never had revelation of. I'm seated in heavenly places. Okay, what place in the heavens? And then this is when the stuttering and stammering starts. By his stripes I'm healed. Where is the manifestation in? I'm not speaking against affirmations. I'm speaking against affirmations that go beyond your capacity, that go beyond reality, that are used as a defense rather than a means to grow and transform yourself. It's easy to talk about that we have heavenly access with no wisdom, access with no protocols, no structure, does you no good. If I tell you that I have $1 million set aside for you, and I give you the address and you never go get your money, that's not because something was never given to you. It's because you never walked in the access you have. And that's our relationship with the heavens. There's 7 heavens. Most people have never experienced one of them. Not because the royal family doesn't want you to, but because you've given yourself preliminaries on when you're allowed to. Most of you wait for when you die to experience heaven, so you wait until you die to experience heaven. You get inspired about people like Elijah and Enoch, who just went into heaven. You hear about people like me and Ian Clayton and Nancy Cohen and Justin Abraham, who go into the heavens regularly. But you don't go yourself, or you only go when we take you. What you should get a revelation of is that you have the same access as the rest of us. It's just that some of us choose to use our access. And even in that, some of us use our access for different things. Some people, just like in church, we used to use the Bible just enough to get a message to preach on Sunday. Instead, now in sonship, we do have people that go in the heavens just to have a cool story to tell. Not really to change the world, not really to make any difference, just to have a good story to tell. Let y'all sit on that one for a moment. So when it comes time to talk about operating in the heavens, it comes with familiarity with the heavens. You have to first get over whatever barrier you have between you and your inheritance. because it's imaginary. It's made up. It's an illusion. There isn't a barrier that actually exists. I have a bunch of people who told me, oh, I don't want to go to heaven. I want them to come get me one day and bring me their self. I don't want to do it on my own. Baby, you're going to be waiting for a long time. When I was growing up, my mama would cook and say the food ready. And if I starved that night, that was because I never went fix me a plate, not because she didn't provide the food. The food is ready. How many times y'all gonna let preachers like myself tell you you can just access heaven and you sitting there going, well, they got to come bring me. You're gonna die having access when you could live with your own access. We want our encounters a certain way, so we're against anything that requires our effort. We want these things to happen a certain way. Oh, one day I just want to get up and Yeshua's standing at my front door and he's like, I want to take you somewhere. And he grabs me and we go through this portal and we off on this superhero movie and we walking through the heavens and everything. And I'm gone for a few months in heaven. And then he bring me back. That's what I want. I can't promise you that. Not just that, what have you done in your spiritual walk that actually warrants an encounter like that? Can you even say heaven is a priority for you? Because for most people, it's not. Even the people who, in devaluing religion say, yeah, heaven is within you. Don't try to connect to the heaven that's within them either. So it's just as much of an affirmation rather than a reality to experience. Because if you actually believe that the heavens were on the inside of you and you're walking around the world that is in desperate need of those heavens, you are a supervillain for not letting the world outside of you experience the world that you say is inside of you. So people talk about time miracles. I grew up hearing about the 2 or 3 different forms of time. They say they have Kairos time. That form of time is eternity time. That's eternal time. It's already finished in Kairos. That's heaven's time. That's eternity's time. What we're in is called Chronos. That's carnal time. That's the world's time. That's earth time. And miracles happen whenever those times cross over. When the timeline of eternity reaches into the temporal timeline and drops something off outside of the time it should have happened. So a healing that should have took a few months happens in a few seconds. They say eternity invaded Earth, and that's a fine way to look at it. But we notice most people don't experience that. I'll tell you why. Most of you are highly unfamiliar with the heavens. Many of you have accepted sonship enough to leave church, enough to walk away from religion, enough to start seeking after the truth, enough to start studying, enough to maybe even start hearing God, hearing the royal family, but not enough to actually be familiar with the heavens on your own. And that's a bit more important because all right, I'll talk about dominion. The level of authority that you walk in the spirit is entirely dependent on where you operate from in the spirit. It's not about what's true about you. What's true about you is that your spirit is perfect and is seated in heavenly, and great. Yay, great. That doesn't matter if you never live from those places. It's not an issue of how great your spirit is. It's about what reality you choose to live in. So if there's 7 heavens, and the 7th one is the highest one, where do you actually live from? See, there's a story that I like that you can find in a book called The Ascension of Isaiah. It'll be in the Bible that I'm getting ready to release soon. Like I said, give me a week. And it talks about, it's Isaiah watching Yeshua descend into the earth. It says he starts off in the 7th heaven. and he takes on the form conducive to the seventh heaven, and everyone knows who he is. Then he drops down into the sixth heaven, takes on the form of the sixth, and they don't recognize him anymore. And then he drops down into the fifth. He takes on the form of the fifth, and they don't recognize him anymore. And he keeps doing that, dropping down and taking on the form until he's born as a baby that we know is Yeshua. And again, they don't recognize him anymore. What that does is give you a code for the heavens themselves. 7 heavens. There's a form in every one of those heavens. Let's be general and say that let's say that you have a throne in every one of those heavens. So there's 7 seats of authority you have. Let's say that. You only walk in the level of dominion as the throne you actually operate out of. And this tells you how the rest of creation responds to you and what you're able to do. There's a lie that goes through people's head where they say, oh, we all have the same access. We can do the same things. That's not true. If one of us is putting in the work to understand where we are and the other one isn't, guess what? One's going to get results and the other is just going to feel left out. It's not a better than or less than. It's either you did the work in the spirit or you didn't. Either you got familiar or you didn't. So let's talk about that, right? So when we talk about dimensions, there's a lot of verbiage that goes around. They talk about 4 dimension, 5 dimension. The thing about dimensions, and the reason why I don't talk that way, is because dimensions are just perspectives. It's just a perspective. It's not a location. A dimension is a perspective. We learn this in art. A one-dimensional thing is just a dot or just a line. 2-dimensional thing. It has width and it has height. 3-dimensional. It has width, it has height, it has length. 3 dimensions. Every dimension is another angle. It's another perspective of looking at the same thing. The thing itself is not changing. It just speaks to a level of perception. And with that perception comes certain abilities. See, a 3-dimensional object has 3 dimensions it can move in. A 2-dimensional object has 2 dimensions it can move in. A 1-dimensional thing has 1 dimension it can move in. Dimension speaks to movement because they speak of perspective. It speaks to a certain state of wisdom. If you can see it, you can move with it. So for us, right, we're physically 3-dimensional. We experience the world in 2D. They say our consciousness is actually 4. Well, here's the thing about 4D. The extra perspective or the extra line, right? The extra dimension being added is time and space. Now, instead of just looking at where a thing is, you're looking at when a thing is. This is why you can go to sleep and have a dream of something that hasn't happened yet and watch it happen, because your soul is outside of the 3D plane and it's able to view time and space from a different perspective than you can with these eyes. So for your soul, looking at the past, present, and future isn't much different than you taking your physical eyes and going look out a window. It's just another place to look. So anything higher than 3D is able to observe time and space without issue. It's not that time and space are not real. It's just that time and space don't have control, because anything higher than the 3rd dimension outranks it. So time and space become subservient to that which lives above it. This is again a key for authority. This is a key for dominion. So when it comes to, right, what the top is the one that rules. The 7th rules every heaven below it. The 3rd heaven rules the 3rd, the 2nd, the 1st, and everything below it. You only have as much authority and you only have so much control over things depending on what heaven you're living out of. It just depends. You have access to the seventh, but you don't live out of the seventh. So you don't have seventh heaven dominion. So just talking about where time and space drops off at, it drops off around the second heaven. Anything higher than the second heaven has dominion over time completely, time and space completely. That's not that high. It's only the third. There's 7 heavens. The third one can be anywhere it wants to be, any when it wants to be. You get to show up whenever you want. So when it talks about Job commanding the Mazzaroth, it's speaking to a level of dominion where times and seasons are subject to you instead of you being subject to time and seasons. See, you're again addicted to affirmations. People will say, "Oh no, I don't live under that zodiac stuff." Guess what? If you're not living above the second heaven, you are living in that zodiac stuff, whether you want to live in it or not. You're not living high enough to not be subject to it. So the best thing you can do is work with it. You come up to the second, the third, the fourth. Oh, now you got some dominion. You get to tell Aries what to do. You telling Taurus and Gemini what to do for you. You begin to orchestrate them instead of them orchestrate you. Oh, no, I got to wait. Yeah, because you're operating under the second heaven. Right? Not about throwing things out of whack, but knowing how to use time to work with you. See, it's not so much about eternity entering into earth. Every one of the heavens have a different time span. They all operate on a different clock. Right? Anything under the first heaven, one day is 24 hours. You move up into the second heaven, one day is 1 month. So you experience time dilations depending on what heaven you're operating out of. You start to feel timeless. The grip of time starts to fall off of you. I'm giving y'all a key to rejuvenation, a key to longevity, a key to agelessness, a key to immortality. It's to actually live in these heavens you have access to instead of just knowing you have access to them. Because the way we currently use the heavens is that I reach into heaven to get me something to come down into earth instead of living from the heavens and sending things down to earth. I live here, I work down here. Instead, we live down here and we work enough to get blessings as if we're working for a paycheck. So you learn to dwell there instead of visit. People ask me, how often do you go to heaven? I'll give y'all a secret. I've never left. I haven't left in years. I'm always aware of heavenly operations because I don't leave. And just like that, different heavens have different protocols, different regiments. I already did a lecture on the 7 heavens, what's in them and what to do in them. I'm not going over that again. What I want to do is put a fire under y'all so that y'all actually start interacting with the heavens. You know, that bothered me years ago. I've been going into the heavens and having heavenly experiences since 2017. I didn't meet other mystics that were walking in that until mid to late 2019, early 2020. And a lot of them started to work my nerves because they were just going into the heavens enough to get whacked. is what they called it. Getting overwhelmed with joy, having a good time, getting the sensations. And they had no burden for the rest of the world. So when anything in the earth happened, if you cared about it, what they'd say is, oh, that's under the sun. You need to get higher. I want you to know that your heart should not disappear when you go into these higher, when you actually start working in the heavens. It's not a prerequisite. You living in heavenly places gives you codes to actually change what's happening in the realms below you. So I'll give y'all a few stories from my life. For about a year and a half, whenever I would pray, I would lay down in my hammock and just kind of sink into the spirit and just choose to be aware of heavenly realities. And I would watch as dark clouds would form on my ceiling, and you could even see the electricity crackling through them. I had storm clouds form on my ceiling almost every day. Sometimes there would come in a mist super thick. It looked like I was in there smoking. There came levels of bliss, levels of power that I started to experience where I could go days without sleep. I haven't experienced depression in over a decade. I've been able to heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out devils. I've had moments where I would be laying in my prayer closet praying. I go into the spirit, come out, and now I'm laying in my hammock. I go back in the spirit, I come back out, I'm in my prayer closet again, this time faced the other way. I've had people ride with me in my car. It takes us about an hour to get where we're going. It takes us 20 minutes to get back. I would speed on the way there and do the speed limit on the way back. And it would take us 40 minutes less to get where we were going. Time dilations. There was one time I drove to Dallas and back in the same day. I filled up my gas tank that morning. I drove to Dallas, had a meeting with some other mystics. I drove back home and my gas tank filled itself back up while I was driving. One day I was on my way to a meeting and one of my students was with me. I was driving and all of a sudden my tire popped. I start to get over on the feeder road and my demeanor doesn't change. In fact, me and him almost start laughing because we were completely unbothered, living in the spirit. We just knew that it was going to get taken care of. We didn't flinch about the situation. Well, I get over and I make it over to the shoulder of the road. And before I could park my car, stop and even look at what happened, another car pulled up behind me. At that exact same time, he got out, changed my tire, and disappeared. Never saw him again. All I did was live a heavenly life. I didn't have to pray for provision to be met. I lived in a space where provision is just everywhere. Living in the Holy of Holies instead of standing in the outer court begging for blessings. So a lot of the strife that we deal with, a lot of the confusion, a lot of the issues we deal with are a byproduct. It's a byproduct of the heavenly status that we refuse to live in. So we want to live a mundane life. Guess what? Earth treats us mundanely. We don't get to experience the supernatural because creation has no reason to treat us like gods. You've committed yourself to earthly living, you get an earthly experience. You start to live from the first or from the second. Life changes almost instantly. I see a question that says, how do you handle the reality of living in the spirit while here on earth? Has it ever made you feel insane? I wish it'd be more fun that way. Y'all tell me if I'm insane or just super sane. The verdict's still out. So it's the heavenly version of you that actually has the tools necessary to change the world. It's less about doing the right thing than it is about being the right thing. The world is waiting for you to realize who you are. Super sanity. Not Super Saiyan. I'm a Dragon Ball fan, but no. I was able to deal with my hometown. Back in 2020, I saw that there were a bunch of hurricanes headed for my area of Texas. I said, you know what? We're not doing that. I was homeless that year. I'm like, I want to enjoy this house a little bit. Not dealing with another hurricane. No. I said, you know what? We good for 3 years. God didn't tell me we were good for 3 years. I said we were good for 3 years. I posted it on Facebook. Just so that I couldn't just go back and say, see, I told you. No. I left a record. We're not having a hurricane for 3 years. And within those 3 years, every hurricane that came either died in the water or turned and hit Louisiana. Sorry, Louisiana. Heaven has solutions for the mundane stuff we're dealing with. It just requires you to be the right person. I'll tell y'all a story about something that didn't even have anything to do with me. My niece. One day we did have a hurricane. This was a few years before. This was like 2018. It was Hurricane Imelda. It just flooded our area. My niece and nephew slept through the whole thing. They were like 3 and 4 at that time, or 2 and 3. I remember he didn't have knees yet, so maybe 2 and 3. So they get up, and there's still about 1 inch of water in the house. And the water had been sitting there like that for the last like 6 hours. Rain had stopped. The water just wasn't draining. So everyone's houses were just soaking for a while. So for the last 6 hours, I hadn't moved an inch. My niece gets up and she saw a problem. She said, why is there water in the house? And we tried to explain to her what a hurricane was. She wasn't having it. She said, water don't belong in the house. So then she takes her little self over to the front door. She looked at the ground and told the water, she said, get out. In less than 30 minutes, all the water was to the ditch. She hadn't been taught the laws of nature and the laws of gravity and the laws of reality yet. She knew water don't belong in the house, told the water to get, and the water got. Here I am already healing the sick. I think I had done my first dead raising by that point. Casting out devils. And I didn't think to just tell the water to go and get somewhere. I'm saying this because it's much easier than people think it is. It's much easier than we think it is. We think it take a multiple year long process. No, it's just you choosing to prioritize heaven. Notice what the Bible says. Y'all like quoting the Bible till it's time to live by it. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and the rest will be added. No, we seek in church. We seeking to be accepted. We're seeking perception. We're seeking ministry. No, seek the kingdom. When you get in the kingdom, you get everything you need there. The rest can't be added to you because you never got into the kingdom. So when you actually start seeking after the kingdom, it's a seek, which means you learn more and more as you're doing it. More and more areas of the empire get unlocked and revealed to you. That's what apocalypse is all about. Apocalypse isn't an end of the world, it's a revealing of a new one. So what I'm inviting you to is your own personal apocalypse. It's a day when you start to reveal, where things become unveiled to you, and those unveiled realities become your new reality. I remember back when I used to work at the car wash, for the first few years, my break was only 15 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on what shift I was working. And some days, if I was real tired, I would make my 15 minutes last for about an hour. So I would set a 50, I would set two different timers. Or more so, I would set a timer on my phone for about an hour. And I would look at the time that was on the clock on my car. And I was able to sit down for 15 minutes, Earth time, while getting an hour break in my car. Because I knew that time was subject to me in that space. People come to my meetings. I preach or I teach for a few hours. I've done 6-hour sessions before, and I finish and people are like, it's been 6 hours? That's because I'll move the room into a time dilation. I'll move y'all into the heaven that I'm in, so y'all are with me. I move y'all out of the 24-hour format, and I move you into a space where I get all the time I need. Y'all don't want to hear that type of stuff. So what I want to encourage y'all with, because I'm getting ready to go on a break, right? I'm going to be gone for the whole month of December. Do not message me. Do not call me. I am unavailable the whole month of December. Getting ready to transition. Me and my family will be in Cameroon at the end of December. Then we're going to be in Kenya in February. So again, those of you who want to donate to that, you can find a link on my website in the courses and events section. That's also where y'all find my itinerary. I have an event coming up in April called Dunamis Day. We're going to be in Houston, Texas. It's a day of demonstration. Those of you who need impartation, those of you who need healing, breakthrough, all that stuff, people who want an encounter with power, show up for Dunamis Day. It's April 11th of next year. I got this book that's already out, Fullness, Guide to Sonship and Mysticism. It's available on Amazon. I have another book that I'm getting ready to release within the next week. I'll make some promotional material for it. But yeah, in general, for those of you who want to connect with me, you can do so on my website, caveofmystery.org. You can find everything about me there. Booking information and all the rest can be found on my website. So I'll tell you this, if you're not enjoying life and life isn't treating you well, life isn't living up to standard, it's because you're not living the right life. You're living an earth life instead of living a heavenly life on earth. It's an easy change. Now, I've done other lectures in the past. I have a lecture that I did on the 7 heavens a few months ago. I have trainings on Patreon for how to access the heavens. I actually finally turned on the membership program. So those of you watching on YouTube, there is now a membership option where I'll start to post more exclusive content. Some of the videos that have already been on Patreon will go on there for those who don't want to use Patreon but don't mind YouTube. It will be limited because, yeah. some things I have on Patreon are not they're not videos, they're audios or posts and stuff like that. All right, y'all. So let me bless y'all. And in the meantime, if y'all have questions related to what I'm talking about today, we'll cover them. If not, I'll see y'all later. So right now, I just speak life over y'all, healing and restoration, prosperity and favor. May you move into power. May you move into grace. May more wisdom be added to you to understand the levels that you operate in, the areas of your calling, the areas of dominion. May you understand and have mastery. I speak an awakening and an apocalypse into your reality. Ashe. Let's see. Patreon will continue. Yeah, Patreon will continue. I like Patreon too much. Last day for oils. Last day for oils will likely be December 20th. So no, Patreon isn't going anywhere. But this will be my last session. All right, and that is it. Let me just check for questions. And nope, we are good. We want more time stories. Another time. When is the new book coming out? I don't have a set day yet. I'm trying to get it out within the next week. All right, y'all. Y'all take care. Y'all be blessed. And I'll see y'all in January. Later.